Getting out of debt starts by getting out of the state of consciousness that caused the debt. Now, everything in reality contains the triality, which is the positive, negative, neutral. Essentially, debt is neutral. It could be either positive or negative, and the one who decides that is the observer. So this video is speaking to those of you who are experiencing debt in your reality that you are seeing as negative and would like to be free of. Before you take action in reality, you have to first of all check in with the state of consciousness you're holding prior to the taking of that action. And a lot of people who are trying to get out of debt do so by taking action in reality without first changing the state of consciousness. So if you're taking action in the state of debt, in an attempt to get out of debt, you are going to be finding yourself banging your head against a wall and just perpetuating the state of debt that you're currently in. We have to start with the state of consciousness that is going to move you into a new reality where that debt is dissolved. My name is Hedley, and if this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I'm a Law of Assumption coach, and my whole purpose for being here is to remind you of who you are, which is the infinite I am observer of your reality, and the one observing reality is the one in command of reality. So this whole channel is about reminding you of how to get back into that commanding role so that you can see more of what it is that you want to see in your reality. If you'd like to know more information about myself or my courses, my books, you can find all of that information in the box below. And if you are enjoying my channel and you're enjoying these videos, you're finding them helpful and useful in any way, I would really appreciate it if you could press that subscribe button. Thank you so much. Because debt is a state of consciousness, we can experience debt in all areas of our lives, including our physical body and our health. We can experience debt with our friends, with our family, with our loved ones. We can go into debt in our relationships. We can go into debt with our work and career. We can go into debt at home. Every area of our reality, we have the capacity to go into debt, because debt is a state of consciousness that is founded on lack, and that lack is a lack of awareness. So where there is a lack of awareness, you are likely to find debt. And of course, money is one of the most common areas where we experience the manifestation of that lack of awareness. Your reality is a reflection of what you're doing with your awareness. Consciousness is the one and only reality, and therefore reality becomes our reflections in physical form that we experience with our five senses. So first of all, in order to understand the state of debt, we have to know what debt is. And that is where etymology can be very helpful. The language that we are using, whether we are thinking it or speaking it, is the signpost for awareness. So the way we use language is very important, and anyone who has worked with me in a coaching capacity knows that I am an absolute stickler for language, because when I'm working with somebody, I am actually listening to not only what they say, but I'm also listening to the language that they're using, because the language that they're using tells me where their awareness is in their reality, and that tells me everything I need to know about what is going on in their reality. So language is super, super important, because it is directing your awareness into the various states. And words contain consciousness. Words have their blueprint, which is why I love etymology, because etymology is the study of the origins of language. It essentially tells you everything about the history of a word, and that word contains all of that history. And a lot of times we're using words without understanding the state of consciousness held in that word. So if you are in a state of debt, we want to understand what that means at the level of consciousness, not at reality. We all know what debt is at the level of reality, but we want to understand it at the level of consciousness. So debt, 1300, anything owed or due from one person to another, a liability or an obligation to pay or render something to another. From Latin, thing owned. And then it comes down here to past principle of debere, to owe. Originally means keep something away from someone. And if we go a bit further down, it says away to have. So debt is essentially away from the having of something. And when we are away from the having of something, there is an owing. So we owe something, or somebody owes us. So where there is debt, there is an owing. Now, this is where we are going to blow a few circuits. So what we want to do is we want to look up the word owe. So to owe, from Old English, to have, to own, to possess. Have to, meaning to possess or to have. Be master of, possess. So to owe means to have, to own. Hang on a second. If I owe something to somebody, such as the bank, how can I own that thing? That doesn't make sense. And this is where those circuits are going to get blown, and we need them to. Now let's go to the word own. 12th century, to possess, to have, rule, be in command of, have authority over. Now, if we take those two words, to own and to owe, both those words originate from the concept of having and possessing. And yet these two words are completely different words. How can that be? And this is where we get to understand the state of debt. Essentially, debt is about ownership. And where there is debt, there is a lack of ownership. So let's take the example of a house. Let's say you own a house, except you don't own the whole house. You own 50% of the house. And the bank owns the other 50%, because remember, everything is all about ownership. Now, where there is a lack of complete ownership, you will find debt. Who is it that's owing money here? The bank doesn't owe you money. You owe the bank money. So you are in debt to the bank because you owe the bank money. Now let's go back to the etymology of the word owe. To owe is to own, meaning to have and possess. So we have to look at who you owe, because that will tell you who owns your consciousness. As long as the bank holds 50% ownership of your home, the bank essentially owns your consciousness. You are under command of the bank. Now, if you keep paying the bank in this state of consciousness, you are going to find yourself continuing to be in debt because you're not changing the state of consciousness that you're taking the action in. Where there is full ownership of something, there cannot be any debt. So in order for you to get into the correct state of consciousness on which to take the action, you have to be in full ownership. You have to take back the ownership of consciousness from the bank. Now, when you talk about the bank is third person in your reality, which means you have to get back into ownership of your own consciousness over your house. This is the first step you have to take, is you have to correct consciousness. In order for you to get command of your reality, you have to maintain full ownership in consciousness first. So you have to claim yourself as the infinite owner, first of all, of your own consciousness, and then of your reality. So I am, which is the infinite owner of all that it is observing, because it is the commander of that which it is observing. So I am the infinite observer, therefore I am the infinite owner of my consciousness. And this is something that we can all be claiming in our reality, whether you're in debt or not. I am the infinite owner of my consciousness. I am no longer allowing that thing out there in my reality to own my consciousness. So I am the infinite owner of my consciousness, and I am choosing that I am the infinite owner of my home. I am 100% in full ownership of my home. Now that you have claimed ownership of the home, you still have, in reality, money that is required to be paid. But this is where reality can start to reflect back what it is that you need in order to be in full ownership of your home. But most people aren't paying debt from the state of consciousness of full ownership of what it is they're in debt to. You have to reclaim ownership of the thing that you owe money to. So I am the infinite owner of my consciousness, and I am the infinite owner of everything I'm observing in my reality, because if I'm observing it, I am in ownership of how I'm observing it. I'm the one that gets to choose. Remember, to owe is to have. If you owe something, The etymology of that word suggests that you have it, but you have to claim it first. So rather than saying I owe the bank, I would suggest saying I am having the money to pay the bank. That's a very different story. This is just a slight shift of the needle of your awareness that is going to produce very different results in reality. But you have to claim ownership first in order to get out of debt, because where there is debt in reality, it means there is a lack of ownership within consciousness. You've given your consciousness to that thing in reality, which is third person, and there is no power at the level of third person. By third person, I mean he, she, they, or it. The bank is it, or the bank. It's third person. You're not in I am. You're not in the commanding role. And that is why there is a debt, because there is a lack of awareness of I am in regards to this dynamic that is unfolding in your reality. I'll give you another example. So let's say you went out to dinner and dinner was $100, you paid $50, and then your friend at the end of the night goes, oh my gosh, I forgot my wallet, can you spot me $50? So you now pay the $100 and your friend now owes you $50. Now you are in debt. But this time it's not you that owes money to your friend. This time your friend owes money to you. But remember the etymology of debt. Anything owed or due from one person to another. So when there is something that is owed or due between one person and another, there is debt. Where there is debt, there is a slipping into third person, because now you're looking at your friend to pay you that money. Your friend now owns your consciousness as long as you remain in that state of consciousness that believes him or her to, or it or they to be in the possession of the $50. In order for you to reclaim ownership of the 50, you first of all have to reclaim ownership of consciousness. I am the infinite and eternal owner of my consciousness. I am the rightful owner of the $50. What you're doing is you're claiming ownership of the $50 that you lent your friend. You're returning ownership to yourself in consciousness first. Then you can apply the I am technique. I am my friend and I am paying the $50 to me. All of those statements, you have remained in the correct state of consciousness because you have remained in I am. As long as you're looking to your friend for the money, you're in third person because you're now looking out there and you're looking to them. And they are third person, and there's no power at the level of third person. And that's where so many of us fall into the states of debt, because we fall into the states of third person thinking and speaking, and there's no power at the level of third person. Third person is he, she, they, it. Where there is debt, there is an owing. And where there is an owing, there is an owning of consciousness. And before you can do anything, you must reclaim ownership of your consciousness, which means reclaiming I am. I am the infinite owner of my consciousness, and I am in ownership of my consciousness, meaning I'm the owner, I'm the commander, I'm the one who decides. And then I am the rightful owner of my home. I am the rightful owner of my $50. So you're claiming ownership of that which is currently appearing under the ownership of somebody else. So in order to get out of debt, you have to get in to the state of ownership, and that starts with your consciousness, and that starts with I am. If I'm having to pay money to somebody, I'm claiming that I am owning the money now required to pay that thing or person out there. This is where you have to start. You have to start with the right state of consciousness before taking any action in reality. And the right state of consciousness begins with I am, and it begins with claiming the owning of that which you are owing. To own and to owe means the same thing. It means to possess. And just to indulge me a little bit further, let's look up the word possess, because to own and to owe means to have, and to have means to possess. Late 14th century, to hold, occupy, inhabit. And of course it says here without regard to ownership. To hold, to occupy, to inhabit. What? The state of having. You have to hold the state of having in consciousness first. You have to occupy the state of having first. You have to inhabit the state of having first. If it's your home, occupy the state of being the full owner of your home. You have to hold and occupy and inhabit that state first. In order to receive the money that is owed to you, you have to hold, occupy, and inhabit the state of already having that money that is already rightfully yours. You have to inhabit the state, and you do that in consciousness first, and you do that with language. I am the infinite owner, and I am having that which I need to pay that person over there. I am my friend and I'm paying myself the money. Now notice, in all of the language that I've just used, I have not used the word debt. I'm not paying off a debt. I'm not getting rid of a debt. And that again is something that a lot of people who are experiencing debt will perpetuate by using the language of debt. Language is the signpost for awareness. So the language that you are using is telling you where your awareness is, and where your awareness is, that's the state that you are inhabiting, that you are occupying. And the state that you are inhabiting and occupying is and must be the state that is being reflected back in your reality. And that is why debt just continues to perpetuate, because we're not changing our language, and therefore we're not changing the states that we're occupying. Consciousness is the one and only reality, and reality is your loyal, faithful servant that will reflect back what you are doing in consciousness with that beautiful awareness of yours. And language is the needle, and where you're pointing it is what is producing the next moment in your reality. Take that, use it across any area of your life, not just in your financial situation, but remember who you are, always and forever, the infinite I am, and your life will get easier the more you stay in I am. And of course, for anyone who hasn't read my book, I Am Money, that is available. You can find the book at my website, and I will also put a couple of videos up here just to remind you, as we are engaging in this very volatile stock market in reality right now, just to remember who you are and what money is, and remain in the state of infinite abundance. That is who you are, have always been, and always will be. Thank you so much for being here, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.